Hey guys, time for another episode of Godzilla Dissection. We're on episode 8, and as you should know by now, the pattern, I'm doing a Showa film. And I guess the hardest part about this review, I was thinking, which one should I do? My original thought was to do Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, but I was like, no. I mean, I already did Against Mechagodzilla and Took Us West back-to-back, so I didn't want to do another one where it introduced a character and then cover the sequel right away. That's dull. So I wanted to do something completely different from the last one I did. And the last one I did, as far as Showa goes, was the Invasion of Astro Monster. You know, one of the, I guess you could say, the golden age of Toho. In the 50s to 60s, where Kondo was behind basically almost all of these films, and they were coming out pretty good. The production value was still really high, and the tone was quite different than what we get later on. So I had to do it. I had to start with the beginning of, I guess, what some call the end, although that would still come later. But it's the year is 1971, and Godzilla vs. Hedorah has been released, otherwise known in America as Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. It's a popular title. And this is the, let me do some math real quick. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is the 11th Godzilla film, although that's on me. I should have done the math simply backwards. 4 Godzilla films came after this. There are 15 in the Showa, so, do your basic math. Makes this one number 11. But in any case, moving past that, this Godzilla film is different in many ways than all the ones that came before it. Number one, excluding, up to this point, it was 11 Godzilla film, and out of all the 10 movies that came prior to that one, only 3 of them, a very small majority, a very small minority, as you'd say, were directed by people other than Shiro Honda. I believe, I forget exactly his name. I think Matoshi Oda, I believe. I could be wrong. Directed Godzilla Raids Again. And then Jun Fukuda, of course, did Son of Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Sea Monster. And he would go on to do a lot of the Godzilla films that came after this one, namely Godzilla vs. Megalon, Godzilla vs. Gigan, and Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. But this one was helmed by Yoshimitsu Banno. And as people know, this is one of those movies that definitely is a love it or hate it Godzilla movie, because there's so many things going on in this movie, both artistically and visually, and yeah, it's just very interesting. I mean, I haven't watched the film for a long time. First time I saw this movie, I saw it on that, I don't know how many people watched it, but that classic sci-fi Godzilla marathon where they, I believe at the time, supposedly showed all 29 Godzilla movies. Although if I was to go back in time, I don't think that was true, because I don't remember them showing. I think the farthest they go is GMK. They did not show Against Mechagodzilla, didn't show Tokyo West or Final Wars, at least as far as I know. But I'm pretty sure they didn't, because I would stay up for the whole 24 hours watching the damn thing. But with that said, that was the first time I saw this movie, and even as a kid, I was like, that was weird. It definitely is not as good as the classics like Mothra vs. Godzilla and Ghidorah Monster, Invasion of Astro Monster. It reaches a strange middle ground, because it's definitely also not as bad as, say, like, Godzilla's Revenge or Godzilla vs. Megalon or even Godzilla vs. Gigan. So, with that said, how does that come about? How did it hit some things right on point and other things not so much? Well, let me delve right into it. One thing I'll say, the one thing I definitely will say, there has not been a single Godzilla film like it ever since, and that was probably because it was a product of the 70s, so, this film is just reeks of that, and I hate to use such a negative connotation, but yeah, it reeks of the whole 70s era style of filmmaking, with the quick cuts and everything else, and the very lucid moments where you wonder if it's fantasy or reality, and all the things they sneak in. Now, is some of it creative? Most definitely. And that's the thing about this movie. Some parts of it you really have to admire. Please excuse the asshole driving by. God damn it, I hate those guys. But a lot of it is creative, and the other things though, you just wonder why. Why did they do it? Why? One thing I will say about the Sony DVD, I'm pretty sure I covered my Godzilla-thon review of it way back many years ago, is that the film is definitely over childized as far as their marketing goes for the DVD, because it's definitely one of the darker films, which is incredible when you think about it. At a time, the weird thing is, this came right after Godzilla's Revenge, probably and honestly the most lighthearted Showa film, if not the most lighthearted Godzilla film of all time, which centered on children. This film, remarkably, is one of the darkest of the entire Godzilla franchise. One of the darkest, and I mean that literally. Now, I mean, let's just delve into that real quick. That's one thing that definitely draws your eye about this movie, is that the human carnage. There's so much going on with the whole Hedorah phenomenon. Hedorah has probably one of the highest body counts, at least as far as on-screen deaths in any kaiju in the Godzilla franchise. I mean, sure, we have certain monsters who, of course, they wipe out a whole city, so, it's just implied that tons of people always die. But there's very few times I actually see it happen. There are some times you see it, like King Ghidorah I don't say actually, inadvertently killing the bad guys in Ghidorah, the monster, Godzilla killing, once again, the bad guys in Mothra vs. Godzilla. But here we literally see a monster just wiping out scores of innocent people. I mean, we literally see their bodies reduced to nothing but skeletons, and to me those moments were amazing because it adds a level of grit to the story, and it's also an enemy that quite like nothing Godzilla's faced before up to this point in the series. Up to this point, he's faced basically monsters who are almost always fairly reminiscent of something we can recognize on Earth as far as animals go, whether it be dinosaurian like Anguirus or Rodan, or something mystical and fantasy like King Ghidorah or Mothra, giant bug. And of course insects, of course, are very popular with Kumanga and Kamacuras, and I guess to a lesser extent, arthropod crustacean like Ebora. Things that we all recognize. Hedorah was very different, although I suppose if you want to include the fantasy element, the ogre, Gabra, but I'm not here talking about Gabra. Hedorah is very different than all those monsters. And it was also the first, well, not the first time, second time, once again, aliens would come back, but this time indirectly. Kind of like how it would be handled in Godzilla 2000, where we never actually see them. This is Hedorah as an alien life form that combines with the pollution of Earth to create a mutation, a space mutation of all things, a concept that we followed up with even more complicated storytelling-wise in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, and not handled quite as well as it is here. Here it's pretty simple. And definitely a lot of pseudoscience as far as how the life form would fuse a pollution to make a bigger life form, but it works. It works quite well. So let me get, before I move on to anything else, so let's talk about things let me talk about things I don't like, I guess. Simplest way to sum up this movie, because a lot of things I do like and I praise it for, and there are things I hate. So let's go to those things first. First of all, of course, the very 70s-esque way it was shot in a lot of ways weren't very necessary at all. They detract from the movie and kind of remove from reality sometimes. You're so confused with what the hell is going on. It was definitely made during that whole let's make the audience trip balls era, like a scene where the kid senses Godzilla. We don't know why. He sees Godzilla's on a roller coaster, and you're wondering, like, wait, is this real or no? Kind of? I don't get it. And then, of course, there's the infamous scene where the guy's in the bar, and then I don't know what he drank or what he smoked or what he injected, but he starts seeing everybody wearing polluted fish mask. And, I mean, it's a psychedelic scene, but completely unnecessary and just so out of tone as opposed to the rest of the Godzilla franchise as a whole. Haven't seen anything like that quite since. Not really on any Godzilla movies I've seen anything like that since. And then one of my second to last quarrels with this movie would definitely be the whole, I mean, these little segments are cool that they have to kind of explain Hedorah's evolution, but then it gets a little out of hand with the animation. Like, we already get it. Animation doesn't tell us anything we don't already know for the most part. Every single time it's just summing up something we just learned in a visual manner. And the fact that it's done in cartoon form, what does it really add to the movie? Technically speaking, nothing. It's kind of pointless. Just why even bother doing it? So yeah, those were really unnecessary. And then of course my biggest complaint about the movie is the soundtrack. I fucking hate it. Is it one of my least favorite of those soundtracks ever? Probably yes, undoubtedly. Along with other things like Godzilla vs. Sea Monsters, also think had a horrible score. But yeah, I was not a fan of it. Usually Godzilla's theme is supposed to be strong and imposing. Here, in this, mind you, it's the same drunken trombone sounding thing that we'll hear in Godzilla vs. Megalon. It's just not a theme for a giant monster at all. It really isn't. When you hear that theme, you see Godzilla approaching. It's just like, what the hell? It just doesn't match. It just doesn't match. It's just bad. And then, I guess the very last thing I could bash from this movie would be, of course, the overly obvious political message, or I guess the environmental message about pollution. Don't do it. It's bad. But that's where I'm going to stop negativity, because in all reality, it's a very relevant issue even to this day, especially in parts of Asia where it's still a very prevalent problem. Even, of course, I live in California, and I look up to the mountain views. I see just a freaking bank of smog all the time, which makes me think of this movie, ironically enough, as it is. So the message is still relevant, and it seems like the cartoon that really just, it's like the anime scenes that really drive it over the edge and make it annoying. However, the theme is still really relevant, even to this modern day, especially back then. But several decades later, it still hits hard. So, for what it's worth, I don't blame them for putting the message there. Now, with that said, let's get to some of the other merits of the movie besides its relevant political message. And that's the way it was shot. Now, not including the whole hippie, any psychedelic scene, which I prefer to just erase out of the movie if it was me. The film was pretty well shot for a non-Honda movie. And, yeah, it has some interesting fight scenes. Now, to get to that, let me start with Godzilla, I suppose. Godzilla looks, well, if you saw Godzilla Destroy All Monsters, this is what he looks like. So, the look isn't new, and it's definitely not one of the worst. The worst Godzilla suit is some kind of tie between 1967 and 1966 Godzilla suit. Those are pretty bad. Really freaking bad. This one's definitely humanoid, but it still holds together. So I can't really complain. It's a really good Godzilla suit. Not one of my favorites, but it gets the job done. And this is the last Godzilla film where it would be intact before Godzilla vs. Gigan's infamous scenes of the Godzilla suit falling apart on camera, which was just heinous. Now, with that said, a lot of the shots of Fear of Godzilla are really well done. And I also like this movie because, like I said, the cinematography is pretty good, especially with the pollution scenes, because it's one thing to sit there and hammer the message home about pollution, but they actually show scenes of like polluted oceans and whatnot, and it looks really good and disgusting, and it makes you cringe. They have the little dolls floating around in the muck, and you see Godzilla trying to get rid of the shit. Although, of course, that was an implied dream sequence, so that's the thing that pisses me off. Like, I'm just like, was Godzilla really trying to get rid of the pollution with his atomic breath, or what the hell's going on? But I like that scene. I just wish it wasn't a dream scene, or was it? Confusing, I know. That's why I hate the whole psychedelic part of the movie. Like, God damn it, be clear with me. But in any case, I liked it. Really dark cinematography. A lot of this movie, I think, as far as I recall, there are very few scenes in daytime that involve the monsters. Very few. I think the only one that there is probably when Godzilla first encounters Hedorah on land. He fights the large tadpole version as well as the flying version of Hedorah. But yeah, the fight scenes are very interesting, and it's shot pretty well. And definitely not the overly human fight scenes that we'd see later on in Godzilla vs. Megalon and Godzilla vs. Gigan, where it's just literally monsters doing flips and shit and karate moves. moving to Hedorah. Hedorah, who go on to obviously inspire Destroya and a host of monsters that come after, such as Megagearus and Legion from the Gamma series. So, Hedorah, you inspired a generation. But yeah, the whole concept of a monster that would start as one form, then keep evolving to next, into the next, bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Something we definitely saw with Destroya, we saw with Legion. These things are all introduced right here, as far as I can see, with the Takatsu genre introduced right here in 1971 with Hedorah. So with that, whether you like Hedorah or not, you gotta give him that much. And then moving on to the design, I think Hedorah looks pretty good when you think about it. I mean, sure, the design can be modernized to look a little more sleek or whatnot, but it looks really good. I love the eyes are really imposing and really just draw your attention. As far as looking at a pile of walking sludge, just what it looks like. And I think in a modernized version of this monster, you would need maybe just a little more organicness to it. Probably, add a tentacle here or there, or maybe breathing holes, I don't know. But overall, Hedorah's a very interesting monster. I just love the monster. Design of the monster, that he was created by man's pollution, and now he feeds off it. Concept that follows very similar to Godzilla's origin. Got created by man. Now, at least in the later on Millennium series and Heisei series, Godzilla would feed off nuclear energy, the thing that created him. It's kind of interesting to think about that. Traits that were Hedorah's kind of become attributed to Godzilla later on, because remember, this time, the Showa era, it would not be until 1984 that we would establish what Godzilla even eats. The Showa era leaves us very vague, and we just assume Godzilla either eats sea animals or doesn't eat at all. So, yeah, it's something to think about. Hedorah inspired a lot in this genre. With that said, I like all of Hedorah's forms quite a bit. The tadpole form is interesting. The first land form is pretty cool. I love the flying form, because even though it looks kind of like an alien ship, it's very interesting. The fact that it sprays this deadly chemical gas as it's going along makes it even cooler. Just like, well, that's pretty interesting. And it, of course, the effects this has on the countryside of Japan is devastating. Like, everything's being laid to waste. And not so much the actual destruction of buildings, like in most of these movies, people are just getting killed off. It's great, it's gritty, it's dark, and it makes you really concerned about how the hell they're going to beat this guy. Which leads to the final form of Hedorah, which is really good. Now, my honest opinion, I like Hedorah more from the side view than I like him from the front view. If I had to really get nitpicky with it, from the front view, it looks, I don't say generic or anything like that, I prefer the side angle shots of Hedorah. It looks really good. Not only is he big and imposing, he's pretty tall compared to Godzilla, taller than Mechagodzilla, at least as far as Showa goes. Not quite as tall as King Ghidorah, but he's one of his biggest opponents of that era. And I love when you see the side angle shots, especially those wide shots that show Godzilla and Hedorah comparison. Hedorah has a nice alien sloping head, the little almost fin-looking tentacle arms, and a nice little tail. Hedorah looks pretty good. I love the fight scenes in that movie. It's overall really good. I like it. I like the look of it quite a bit. So, with that said, and then, let's be real here, if I had to rate all the Godzilla fight scenes, the final battle is pretty freaking good, because Godzilla takes such a massive beating in this one as composed to other ones. I mean, it was a Showa era, so, Godzilla would never take too much of a beating until finally Godzilla vs. Gigan in the next film will take it even, I won't say further, but it will try to emulate what was done here by making Godzilla just take such a beating during the movie where blood is drawn. Now, thanks to Gigan, one of my favorite monsters. But here, it's a different, and honestly, once again, different than anything we'd see pretty much for the rest of the series, because we haven't seen this kind of fight replicated since, where Godzilla's fighting an opponent he doesn't even know how to fight, because even touching Hedorah's body, it damages his own skin. It melts his hand down to the bone, which is a very interesting look. He loses an eye in the process because Hedorah's toxic freaking blood. And of course a little laser beam, which is very interesting. Very random, sure, but interesting though. I like it. If you think about it, Hedorah is one of Godzilla's most dangerous opponents. Godzilla basically, once again, needed the help of man to beat this guy. And this wasn't even a 2-on-1 fight like in Terror of Mechagodzilla. This was 1-on-1. He just couldn't do it. It's a much tougher opponent than anything he had faced before at the time. You can make the argument Showa Godzilla probably can't beat King Ghidorah's own, which he probably couldn't. But by the time you get to Invasion of Ashramon, you get the feeling that Godzilla would do fairly well in a one-on-one fight with King Ghidorah, at least as far as the Showa era goes. I know Heisei and Millennium, it changes quite a bit as far as power scales, but here Godzilla is completely outmatched for the first time on his own. Not even a close even fight, but it's a nice brutal fight. Godzilla punching Hedorah in the eye and taking it out. It's my favorite Showa fights, and the good thing about it is that a lot of them fight is done without music, so you have to worry about the cheesy bull crap. As far as the fight goes, you just enjoy it. Now, moving that aside, the conclusion of the movie, of course, the humans find a way to finally get rid of Hedorah, which is drying his body out. Which is another, once again, similar plot concept to what happened to Godzilla vs. Destroyer. And, of course, we have the infamous flying scene where Godzilla propels himself with his atomic breath, which makes no sense in any shape or form, because what we've seen so far in this series up to this point is Godzilla's breath simply blows shit up or sets it ablaze. So the fact that it can propel him off the ground is just, no words can really describe it. Even when I saw it as a kid, I saw it, I was like, oh, that's neat, but just why? And moreover, if he could do this, as a kid, of course, I was thinking more logically. I was thinking along the kids of logic. So, like, why doesn't he use this all the time? But of course, everybody probably knew once the movie released, it was probably a dumb idea. And yeah, it really was a dumb idea. But of course, I've heard it was shoehorned in just because I hear representatives of Toho wanted the scene in there. That's the story behind it, supposedly. And I didn't cover the human characters at all in this one because they're not really. I mean, they're involved, sure, but not beyond anything that's really notable. And a lot of the actors in here would not appear again in a Godzilla film, or simply have not appeared in one at all. I mean, if I think hard, it might be one or two, but for the most part, this is a unknown cast to me. And sure, I'm not Ed Gottschalk or one of those Godzilla veterans. I am a Godzilla veteran, but it's not as far as human actors go. I mean, I guess you could say that's my weak spot. I don't memorize them, but as far as I know, none of these actors or actresses appeared in another Godzilla movie. And I'm pretty sure, because I at least remember their face, like you must always do. Other ones would have classics, like, because there's Megalon would have a guy who would return in Terror Mechagodzilla, and so on and so forth. Now, with that said, human characters are alright. They do their part, and yeah, it's pretty entertaining. Now, with that said, we move on to the impact it had on the series as a whole. As I clearly have been talking about, I think Hedorah himself inspired a whole lot for the Godzilla franchise as far as monster designs and monster behavior. Really did. I think it also had some very good fight scenes that definitely at some point need to be replicated in the modern era. They really do, because that's my biggest complaints about fights that would come after this, Heisei and Millennium, is that they don't get brutal enough for me. And I hate to sound like a kind of bloodlust hungry fan or anything, but there's a problem when a fight lacks intensity, and an older film was doing it, a better job at it than the new ones. I mean, films like Godzilla 2000 were cool, but the ending fight scene to me lacked any real struggle, especially on Godzilla's part. Godzilla just kind of struggled to find a way to beat him, like just wipe him off the face of the earth, but Godzilla didn't really struggle with the fight at all. He just sat there watching Orga keep coming back for more of a beating, whether it be with the tail or especially the heat ray, which decimated him. So watching it here with, enemy who's first of all unaffected by this heat ray and can cause actual physical harm to Godzilla is interesting. And now, as far as artistic merits of the movie, it's just half and half. To me, with the proper direction, this could have been one of the best ones of the Showa era. However, a lot of things hold it back. Like I said, horrible music, a lot of very unnecessary ways of shooting scenes, and very unnecessary scenes in general, and confusing human plot lines, like the whole, is the kid psychic or not? It's not questioned or really thoroughly analyzed at all. I mean, the good thing is back in the 60s, like the crazy Ghidorah the Head monster storyline, at least we had a crazy plot line. You delved into it and actually explored it a little bit, instead of just ambiguity that I just don't like. In any case, I'm surprised I talked about it for this long, but yeah, Godzilla's Hedorah definitely will come off as a 7 out of 10 for me. 7 out of 10. Speaking strictly numerically wise, to get really thorough with it, I definitely would give it like a 7.3 or 4. You know, like a hard C plus, C minus. Actually, beyond more, it's like a C minus. As far as special effects go, it definitely isn't what we would get later on. So I give it that much credit. There's little to no stock footage in this movie. It's almost all. I mean, from what I can, if I had to rewatch it again, I'm pretty sure there's almost no recycled shots in here. They are none because they really couldn't at this point. I mean, it's entirely different from everything else. I mean, Godzilla's Hedorah, Godzilla's Megalon and Gigan are almost carbon copies of each other in a lot of ways. So of course they could reuse a lot of the shots, shamelessly as it was. They did because they felt the need because they were using recycled monsters, recycled plot devices, recycled settings. Here, it's very different, and that's the best way to describe this movie. It's very different, and there's nothing like it in the entire franchise to this day. So yeah, definitely 7.3. I think is pretty fair for this movie, given what it is and given what it does for the entire series. Now, I would love to see Hedorah come back in a future film. Anybody knows the history of this movie knows that Yoshimitsu Banno fell out of favor with Toho after making this movie because, once again, it's so different and radically different from everything else that came before it that I believe Tomoki Tanaka was just like, there's no way in hell I'm going to let you approach this series ever again. And he pretty much held true to his word. Yoshimitsu Banno did not come back from the Godzilla film. Although if you're a hardcore Godzilla fan, you were following the news online like every single day, waiting for them to announce a new Godzilla movie that would be American. Because at first it was said that he was going to direct it. It was going to be supposedly a short, which to me, of course, at the time I didn't get it all. A 30-minute Godzilla film, what? A 3D Godzilla film where Godzilla's in Las Vegas fighting a new monster, Deathla, who, from all descriptions, was going to be basically a redux Hedorah. Would that have been interesting? Hell yes. But am I glad it didn't happen? Yes, because then we got the much more elaborate film that we got with Gareth Edwards, which is pretty good. But I do want Hedorah to come back someday. I think it'd be a very interesting opponent and very different. So, with that third Godzilla film, let us hope something happens with it where we get really crazy with the monster lineup. I like the second movie's lineup, Rodan, Mothra, King Ghidorah, but to see some crazy ones like Hedorah and Gigan get in there, as hopeless as it may be, it'd be awesome if they did. But who knows? And of course, the Japanese series is also coming out. So, who knows if they'll bring back new monsters or introduce new monsters or get old ones. Who knows? Hopefully, a combination of both. That's why I'd like to continue to see the trend I want to see. So yeah, I think I've covered Godzilla vs. Hedorah long enough. One of the most famous entries in the Godzilla saga. And Josh out.